Chapter 1. Fuzz. The radical left doesn't want to acknowledge it, but there's a dominance hierarchy of fuzz pedals, and it's become quite obvious that the Big Muff is at the very top. In 1981, Mike Matthews, the founder of Electro-Harmonics, was receiving constant attacks and harassment from leftist union thugs, and he had to close the EHX factory in New York City. That was a big problem for him. When the USSR fell, along with its woke communist agenda, Matthews moved production of Big Muffs to the newly liberated Russia. When Ronald Reagan said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," little did he know that guitarists would replace it with a wall of fuzz coming from Russian Big Muffs mounted on pedalboards across the West. Now these shoegaze tricksters like to rakishly subvert expectations with their pedals, putting their Big Muffs after their delays, and the Muff's higher input impedance allows for this. But if you have a classic 2-transistor fuzz, like a fuzz face or a tone bender, those need to go first in your signal chain, otherwise we'll see who buffers who. Chapter 2. Tuners. Next in your signal chain should be a Peterson, whose pronouns are strobe tuner. And if you can't respect that, then you're committing a hate crime in Ontario. That's a problem for you, bucko. If you want to be hyper successful as a guitarist, be conscientious about your tuning, and stop those dots from moving to the far left. Chapter 3. Reverb and Delay. Your time-based effects determine your place in the dominance hierarchy. If you're not using Strymon, Chase Bliss, or at least Source Audio, how do you expect to be at the top? This is true across all archetypes of guitarists, but especially praise and worship. When Friedrich Nietzsche wrote God is Dead, that was not an excuse to use a knockoff Behringer reverb on your church gig. Tap-tempo delays with subdivisions will stabilize your delay repeats, which will stabilize you psychologically during your performance. And that's associated with better stage presence, and that's associated with better paying gigs. And those are associated with home ownership and being able to start a family and take on some responsibility. Unsynchronized delays signal a lack of order, and those ambient trails will devolve into pathology and meaninglessness. Chapter 4. Pedal Construction. In the past several decades across the West, there's been a rejection of globalism and a return to small batches of traditional handmade products. Young men who come to my talks ask me if hand wiring produces better tone. Well, that depends on what you mean by tone. Depends on what you mean by better. But I've been looking into this, and there's converging evidence from multiple Red Scholl videos indicating that printed circuit boards have lower capacitance compared to hand wiring. That can provide a clearer tone. So you might say, well, why not just give in to nihilism and use Behringer pedals then? Well, those are housed in plastic, and that's a xenoestrogen, and that's a big problem for your testosterone levels. Now, if you don't have a masculine stage presence, and you're hoping a woman in the audience will want to bear your children, it's like, yeah, good luck with that. With your T levels suppressed from dialing in your Behringer pedals, you won't be able to get her eyes off her cell phone and her Tinder app, and up onto your fretboard. That's a problem for birth rates in the West. Chapter 5. Conclusion. Now go clean up your pedal board. Set your signal chain in order so that your pedals orient themselves toward a common objective. Create tones that serve the song rather than your own pleasure-seeking self-interest. Let your guitar speak out confidently. Perform at the highest levels of virtue. That's a meaningful frequency to operate on, and it's one that's been resonating with many young men. So choose your pedals wisely, and stop letting the globalists flood the market with plastic knockoffs. Buy some pedals made closer to home, and find a woman to share those tones with. Affiliate links are in the description.